What's the difference between anaerobic threshold training and lactate tolerance training? A great question was asked to me the other day by one of my Genius Max students, and a great question to answer. So let's have a look at what each one of these are, because they are subtly different. Anaerobic threshold training is basically, at the moment I'm in my aerobic energy system. If I go for a jog, I'm still in my aerobic energy system, producing energy quicker aerobically than if I was standing. If I run faster, I'm still in my aerobic energy system. I can keep running faster and faster until I get to that threshold where my body cannot provide enough oxygen to produce energy fast enough to meet the energy requirements of the work that my body is performing at that intensity of exercise. And that's when the body will start to draw upon other energy systems, such as the anaerobic energy system, such as the lactate system and even the phosphate system, where we'll start to draw energy. And the byproduct of that is that I start to get accumulation of lactic acid. So anaerobic threshold training is training in my aerobic system at an intensity that is as high as I can possibly train that or perform at, that if I go any higher intensity, I'll start to click into the anaerobic energy systems as more of a predominant source of energy. Which basically is that threshold point is where the accumulation of lactic acid is equal to the removal of lactic acid, therefore I can continue exercising in the aerobic energy system, but at the peak of aerobic energy system. So anaerobic threshold training is not just jogging or plug jogging or walking, it's training in the aerobic system right up to that threshold. So what you're basically trying to do is increase the intensity so you can push that threshold up. So if you want to do specific training for that, then you have to exercise on that threshold level, just beneath it or on it, but not above it, because when you go above it you start to fatigue due to the accumulation of lactic acid. So it might be you'll be on a bike or a run or a treadmill or whatever it might be, and I'm running as fast as I can, that if I go any faster, I'll actually fatigue and decrease my performance. So it's just on that edge, and obviously at that level you can maintain that intensity for 5, 10, 20. The elite athletes can maintain it for a long period of time. So if you ever watch the Olympics, whether it be the 1500 meter or the 5000 or the 10,000, and if it's not a slow paced plug jog at the start, if someone takes off at the start and the whole race is just push all the way around for the 5 kilometers or the 1.5 kilometers, they're basically exercising at the anaerobic threshold. It means they're just pushing that limit. They're not going over it, because as soon as they go over it, they'll start to fatigue. But they're pushing that limit, training at the highest intensity they possibly can in the aerobic energy system. So if you're going to train for that, you might do, say, 10 to 20 minute running sessions or rowing sessions, but you're going flat out as fast as you can, not to the stage where you start to fatigue, but just on that peak or that threshold. Hence they call it the anaerobic threshold, because if you go above that threshold, you start to draw upon energy from anaerobic pathways. So that's anaerobic threshold training. Now if you look at lactate tolerance training, that's exactly what it is. It's designed to train your body both mentally and physically to tolerate the accumulation of lactic acid. So this type of training, you're going to actually go beyond that anaerobic threshold for short periods of time, such as interval training. So I might do a 1 minute burst or a 2 minute burst or 30-second burst, and I go beyond that, and it does induce fatigue and accumulation of lactic acid. Then I have a rest, and my body tries to rebuild all its ATP stores and starts to try to buffer away the lactic acid, and then I perform my next interval. But tolerance training is I don't rest long enough where I'm fully recovered. I rest enough where I can go again, but I still have in my body the presence of a lactic acid. So what I'm doing is each interval I'm accumulating lactic acid, but I'm going beyond that anaerobic threshold, back underneath it, beyond it, back underneath it, with short rest intervals. So it might be 30-second rest intervals or no more than 1 minute, where I can actually hit the next interval already with lactic acid flooding around my body. So what I'm doing is I'm training or conditioning my body to continue exercises in the presence of lactic acid, so I can build my adherence to it, or I can build my tolerance to that lactic acid from a physiological point of view, but also from a psychological point of view. So that type of training is you're not going up to the threshold, you're going above it and back under it, above it and back under it, with shorter rest intervals to build up your fitness level by increasing your intensity by going up to 90, 95, 100% of effort, but then bringing it back down, building up the lactic acid, and just repeating that until you can tolerate it. So in a lot of sports, you have to exercise in with the body flooded with lactic acid. If you're defending the line in rugby league, no matter how tired you are, you've got to keep getting up and keep tackling, even if your muscles are sore and your lactic acid is high. If it's boxing, you've got to keep boxing. Wrestling, you've got to keep wrestling. So many interval-based basketball, where there's interval, they'll do a lot of lactate tolerance training. Now, as a base for that, you may look in aerobic base where get your anaerobic threshold up by doing anaerobic threshold training, and then that will lead progressively into interval type training to build up your tolerance to lactic acid by doing lactate tolerance training. So there's a couple of things to look upon when you're looking at designing programs. Make sure you have a basic level of fitness first. Don't go straight into lactate tolerance training, because you actually feel sick because you won't be conditioned to it, and that is no cow poo.